back. We're the Book Mavens. I'm Amanda, she's Rachel, and you're joining us for Mystery March, where I make Rachel read lots of books that are not in her favorite genre.
But I'm learning so much as a reader. It's good.
It's going. She enjoyed Mr. Churchill's Secretary. So far, I was 1 for 2, and now I'm 1 for 3. We read this week Stuart Turton, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which honestly, the back of the book really nails it in terms of what is this book about. Harper's Bazaar called it your favorite Agatha Christie whodunit in the blender with a scoop of Downton Abbey, a dash of Quantum Leap, and a liberal sprinkling of Groundhog Day. So we talked about in the preview for this month's project that the Agatha Christie-ness, it does read as very and then there were none. They're all trapped on this estate together, trying to solve a mystery, no contact from the outside world. The Groundhog Day part is because they're repeating the same day, right? And the Quantum Leap, he keeps waking up in the body of a different person in this mystery. And so he's trying to figure out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle at the end of the night. So they keep repeating the same day over and over in different hosts.
But it's in a set period of time. He has 8 days to do it. So he can transfer hosts, so he can serve a whole day in any given host. And so if one host goes to sleep, he can jump back into a previous host as long as there's still time during that
during that window.
Yeah, so there's 8 full cycles that he gets with each host.
And then the Downton Abbey part is really just the setting. It's set on this manor. There's
time period.
There's a lake and hunting parties and the servants, the upstairs downstairsness of it. It's really the setting. But so it does kind of read like an Agatha Christie in that way too. But it's spot on Harper's Bazaar. Good job, you.
There's elements of the plot that has that kind of upstairs downstairs effect, which I think also mimics Downton Abbey. So he's placed in servants as well as the upper echelons of society. So kind of all over the place.
So good job, Harper's Bazaar. You nailed it. So we did discover, as Rachel was looking for a digital version of this book, that there are actually 2 of these. There's the one that I had bought, which was 7.5 Deaths, and then she found where it says 7 Deaths, and she was asking me well, which one is it? But Nancy drew it.
I sure did. I solved the mystery.
She solved the mystery.
It's not that big of a deal, but
I know, I'm not gonna admit it. I kind of thought it was gonna be.
It's not.
I wanted it to be a way deeper, more complex,
scandalous, something or other. But no, it was a publishing decision because at the same time that he released 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle in the UK, there was an American author who released The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and the names are so similar that when he released the US version, they changed it to 7.5 Deaths just to separate it. So that's why you can see some editions that are 7 Deaths and some editions that are 7.5 Deaths. It was just a publishing decision to try and separate these 2 remarkably similar titles that were released around the same time. That's it.
Marketing.
That's the big mystery. But there's no actual difference between the 2 books. That's what I wanted to make sure. Was this something where they added chapters? Was there some kind of bonus edition? That was my concern. So I wanted to make sure that we were reading the same one.
It could be very witness for the prosecution. If you ever watched that, it's based on an Agatha Christie short story, but they made a movie version of it, Witness for the Prosecution, and it was kept so secret. They wouldn't even allow, this is back when movies had attendants. The attendants were required to leave because they played different endings in different theaters. Very fascinating. And then they did the same thing with Clue, later, which also is a fantastic movie. Let me just throw that in there. Mystery lovers. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway.
Well, I kind of wish that there were multiple editions endings with different endings.
Well, okay.
Spoiler.
Yeah.
I didn't like how it ended.
So, it is utterly unique. The kind of sci-fi constructed elements within the mystery, I'd say particularly in the latter half, as you start to understand the circumstances that brought him there, he starts to have more interaction with with people who know more than he does. I don't know how to describe it better than that until we get to the part where we're going to warn you not to watch anymore if you want to read it. But so it is utterly unique. I will give it that. It was a very, and I can only imagine the writing process was really complex.
I imagine a lot of
the time
strings.
Yeah.
And
no murder board kind of thing going on, but little conspiracy-esque because of the time jumpy nature, and even the time jumps within the day. Like some of the chapter headings will be like day 2 continued because he's moved hosts, or so you're not even just like repeating the same 8-day cycle over and over. You are, in some elements, he ends up repeating the same day more than once because he'll jump back into a host who's earlier in the day. So like it was, to be fair, a lot to keep track of. So I have to give, a lot of respect to the author who thought of that, first of all, and then who managed to put it into this novel. Okay.
Yeah, but how successful they were at it, debatable.
I mean,
for me,
I think they were successful, but I have other thoughts. So, anything else you want to say in the general thoughts?
This was not an enjoyable read for me overall.
She's underselling it, guys. She struggled.
I really did.
She took several breaks. Honestly, it reminded me a smidge of when you read Sanderson.
A little bit. I mean, I didn't go like prostrate myself across her desk
That's
like
true.
I did with Sanderson, but
that one was a series. This one was one book.
This was one book. But it was the issue is that I felt that this author was overly ambitious in what he tried to do, and the overall flow wasn't very good. I felt like the beginning set off with such kind of promise. Like it sounded really interesting. Like the premise sounds amazing. But it took over half the book until he got into a specific host where you really could see like coming to these kind of connections. And I understand what he was talking about, like in terms of like the limitations of his hosts. Some of his hosts weren't very smart. Others were very bright.
Like
physically
we're not healthy.
Yeah. And so I just don't think that he pulled it off very well. It was so murky and muddy that as a reader, because we talk about us in terms of readers, where Amanda is more like she's along for the ride. She waits for the book to actually tell you what's going on. And I like to try and pick things apart. And they just didn't give you enough information until you're like over halfway through the book with a particular host who actually starts to align things in a way that makes it understandable for the reader. And it wasn't until then that I actually really started to enjoy the book again. So to me, that was a big commitment because she's not like the smallest book.
No.
She's kind of chunky.
It's a commitment.
And so for me, like the reading experience, it just took me a lot. I did have to set it down. I set it down. I actually like binge read an entire other series. Talk about that one later. But before I could get back into this book, because I was determined I was really tempted to call Amanda and say I got a DNF. Like DNF.
I would, well, to be fair, I would not have let you.
But I'm not a quitter. We all talk about that. I'm not a quitter. I don't quit on books. I said, no, I'm going to get back into it. I just had to have a little break. And so I got back, and then I was able to, just, settle down and get into it. But it took a while. And for me, it was just really just a total dissatisfaction with how they wrapped it up in terms of what questions the author answered and which ones he didn't. And just some of the character plot, like there are a lot of problems for me for this book. There's a lot for me. And I just want to get that to you before we get into our spoiler section. Like I don't want to ruin it for any of you who are interested in reading it. I had some major issues with this book.
I really enjoyed the beginning. I got a little tired in the middle. And then I was back in it as we got towards the end. And then like Rachel, I do have some points where I'm not satisfied with. I wasn't satisfied with the amount of attention they were given in the story to then have such a scant or casual explanation. Like the balance of that didn't feel balanced to me. In some mysteries, you get a lot of when you're reading a mystery novel, there's often a lot of emphasis placed on certain points. And then of course those points get a lot of the weight of the explanation. Usually like motive, for examples, But this one, I will say the balance fell off for me a little bit in some places. I will say there were some genuine surprises. Like, I did not see some stuff coming. Like, so in terms of like genuine plot twists, I think it was there. Like I said, the beginning, I was intrigued. I was in it. I did get kind of fatigued in the middle. And then at the end, it picked up again, and I was like back in it, and I wanted to know. And then, you know.
Well, I think this book really struggled with two things. Okay, so you have two things going on because there's two kind of mysteries you're trying to figure out. So you're there with the main character trying to figure out who killed this woman. Like, so that's the kind of standard whodunit Agatha Christie. But the sci-fi element is also like, how is this happening? And why is this happening? Who's controlling it? What's going on? Are we talking about like something futuristic? Are we talking about more like Dante's Inferno, like in terms of like the seven circles of hell?
How do you get out?
What? Yeah, like what is happening? So you have these two things going on, and there's just not enough balance between the two of them, and you're still like you'll get the mystery solved, but this whole other element that I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, like you get this big exposition at the end, but it doesn't answer the questions for this side of it. So it just felt super uneven, where like, you know, mystery novels are known for the big expository dump at the very end, right? You know, where everything's explained to you, but we could have had pieces of the puzzle given to us throughout that narrative while also trying to solve this murder that would have made the book so much smoother and would have made that ending more satisfactory. And so to me, that was a really missed opportunity for this author that would have made it so much more interesting and so much more enjoyable, and without having to rely so heavily on the big info dump at the end that didn't end up answering a lot of those questions. So
for the second,
it's just so uneven for me.
Surely,
yeah.
So if you're planning to read it, now would be the time to stop. Ooh.
Yeah. An Albus attack.
Now would be the time to stop, because we're going to talk about some of those things that we were dissatisfied with in the explanation, which will inevitably spoil the twist. And some of them are genuine surprises. Like some of it, you know, of course, there's some explanation of how they got in the book and all, you know, how they got in this cycle, but some of this is going to spoil the twist for you. So
you're going to find out what really made me mad about this book. So, yes, for sure.
Stop now. Okay. The part that I'm the least satisfied with, I think.
Oh, we're back on. Sorry.
Well, okay, go ahead. Okay. In terms of the mystery, like in and of itself, like who killed Evelyn Hardcastle, I thought that was a great whodunit. There were twists. There was surprise. I mean, who knew Evelyn Hardcastle was going to end up being the real monster, right? Or one of them. There were several characters. So I was like, wow, you are horrible.
There's a lot of unlikable people.
I did think it was very unique in terms of like when they popped up and like, hey, this is actually a prison, because it plays on this like deeper discussion about redemption and
well, do we want to separate our conversation and talk about the mystery?
Here's my thing. I was fine with the mystery in of itself. It drug a little too long for me. I think to be fair, I honestly think there were too many hosts. If there had been fewer hosts, I could have gotten through that a little bit faster. But because we kept belaboring the same point, host after host, and like you said,
and going back,
I think that's a big thing. It wasn't until we got to the last two hosts, where it really starts coming together. So I felt like there was way too much groundwork laying for not a big enough payoff for that. And so that was one of the imbalances, is like this like layoff work that you did with so many different hosts and so many different pieces. And it did show like a complexity of writing, but I just don't feel like the payoff or the necessity was there in the end in terms of who killed Evelyn. Right.
Well, there were things that happened in certain hosts that just didn't seem to contribute much to the overall mystery. And then you spent a lot of time in those hosts, and you might have gone back and revisited those hosts, and it just didn't seem like there was enough there.
I think in some level the intent, like this is it's a commentary on human nature, and humans are neither all good or all bad for the most part. But they have, like, everybody has a secret at this estate, which is true. But the part for me, it's really the second part about like why they're there. Like, so it's a prison, and we talk about it's a conversation on rehabilitation, right? That by putting them in this circumstance where they are helping solve unsolved murders, but B, you're giving them a chance to change and be different people than they were. Like, it is a very interesting conversation on, like, punitive rehabilitation. What does that actually mean in terms of changing your nature? But honestly, it had the hints of a deeper conversation, but really didn't go there for me because it was pretty, I mean, you learn that he's been trapped in there for 30 years, right? And the plague doctor talks a lot about how, like, you're, you know, basically how Aiden, that's his name, Aiden is not the same man that he was when he went in. I mean, but I think, yeah, 30 years of repeating the same days would do it.
Aiden, to me, it's about this whole other character that you have going on, because Aiden's not alone in this loop. He's also there with this woman named Anna, or Annabelle, right? Yeah. And where she is actually the one who's being punished. Right. Aiden Bishop volunteers to get into this loop because he wants to
vengeance.
Yeah, he wants to further punish this woman. And to be honest, that woman deserves to be there. She's awful. And the things that she did to Aiden and his family
are awful.
I mean, she's like this like global terrorist who tortured Aiden's sister for like a week and then kills her. And this is like publicly kills her. And I'm like, when we talk about redemption, that is, and to me, the author doesn't spend enough time to me in terms of trying to emotionally invest in characters. Like, so with Aiden, you get his first host is this really drug dealing doctor, but he goes on a walk with Evelyn. And so now just like in the span of a couple hours, that's just because she's nice to him that now he wants to save her and is totally emotionally invested. And this carries on through these hosts. And I'm like,
and let me be clear, she's not nice to any other host after that. But like, I think that's what I mean by the imbalance, right? Like,
but like the whole thing too is then just like tied to Anna, and now he's invested in saving Anna.
Well, Anna's supposed to be this, like, she's the one who's supposed to be being rehabilitated, right? Mm-hmm. This is supposed to be a test for her if she's truly changed her character. But we spend all of our time trying to understand Aiden's changes loop after loop. And then, like, as he learns what he did in previous loops and, like, and how he's changed, and he's trying to, like, reconnect with his original self. And then, like, poof, but it's supposed to be about Anna. And then you don't
like
really
whiplash for me. And there's not enough in the book to make me invest or to make me think that Anna is anybody worth saving. I'm sorry. As soon as they give you that information about her background, leave her the F there, because
and I think
I'm not big in rehabilitation. And they go through this whole thing where it's like she has forgotten everything that she's done, and so she is kind of become a new person, and that's
they get that opportunity. You get to choose when you leave if you want your original memories back or not. And he says most of the criminals, because that's who's supposed to be in here, the criminals choose to leave it. But she's very publicly known. Like, there's no way that she's not going to be persecuted in the outside world, which they talk about. But that's I think the compression of because of the compressed nature of the story, the author was hoping that, like,
makes me so grumpy. Yeah.
Just like, this is like the whole, like, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
She's like, so I think the author intended that the compression of the timeline would force more emphasis on these, what feel like very minor interactions, right? Singular interactions. And then, like, that is going to somehow, like you said about Evelyn, that one interaction shapes his whole loop. Right. And that I'm like, okay, I guess, because if you don't have anything else, you hang on to the kindnesses you get, because he goes through some pretty brutally awful stuff. But then, like, again, I don't know that it necessarily worked. I think the author's intention was there, but I don't really think it worked.
There's not enough payoff. You're talking about 8 days.
Yeah.
8 days. And so all of a sudden we care about her and we see because she comes to his aid. But he also talks about it in the book about her showing very little emotion, doing horrifically brutal acts.
Yes, she just like kills somebody, and she's like, "Well, but I need you to do it."
And I'm like, and see, like, to me, that doesn't speak of rehabilitation and being in this trapped loop and like working with him. She's working with him because he promises to get her out. So it's like, is she really like? There's so much about intentions that is lost and super gray for me that just it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. I'm not invested. This whole idea is that they just go off. They never explain how this prison works. They don't explain what the outside world is like. Is this futuristic? What is happening? We don't know anything. And they answer none none of these questions. So it was super frustrating for
honestly, me. They leave it kind of in a way that I'm like, wow, that just seems really kind of convenient. Like, so basically, this is my thing too. He loves his sister. Like, he's very close to his sister. He loves her so deeply that he's willing to go into this experience just to get his vengeance on this woman. Mm-hmm. But then at the end, because he's also now a different person, willing to put that all aside, not pick up any of his memories, including if he has a family on the outside, any of that, to basically run off with Anna. And I'm like,
what?
I
can't with this.
It just didn't land authentically for me. And
it didn't. These short times.
I wanted to know more about the prison. Like, I wanted to know more about how this worked. I wanted to know what happened afterwards, because they literally wander off into the mist.
There's nothing. They
just say, they're just like, he just like takes her hand and she's like, let's just walk until we get somewhere. And I'm like, what? After all that, that's how you're going to get out of here? Is you're just going to walk until, what?
I just can't.
I did put it down with a little bit of a,
I mean, it was too much of a time commitment for me for very little payoff that was in any way satisfactory. I mean, the whole end, like in terms of all the confrontation, solving the murder, like that was all fun.
That was very
entertaining.
Little twist after, like a twist within a twist. Like, it's Evelyn, just kidding. It's like I liked that.
I mean, but also, like, my complaint with Agatha Christie is that there's no way that you as a reader could have pieced together everything that was going to happen until you get to his second to last host, and watch he's in a cop's body. That he starts piecing things together. So you spend over half the book totally lost.
I do think it was too much.
Too much in that
in the beginning. And then they compressed too much at the end to try to make it fit.
Super uneven.
It was very unbalanced. I would have liked it so much more if there had been, because I do think the clue dropping was there in the beginning. Like, I think there were, because I was like mentally piecing things.
But they should have had him.
But it was too long.
Right.
It was too much.
He spent too long in hosts that were gathering information without connecting anything along the way. So he needed to, like, have a few more times. Like, with Ration, he's only in the cop's body for one rotation. He never goes back. And so, like, they should have broken him up a little bit more so you could have gotten some clues here and then piecing some things together. So you're, like, along for the ride, but you're also... like, things are starting to come together, and there's just no progress over half. Like,
that's true. That's part of that unbalancedness.
And it's like, they keep going back. Like, there's a butler that gets horribly beaten, and he's, like, unconscious.
Over and over again.
And, like, he's just, like, trapped in this, and he goes back to him how many times? And for nothing.
Basically, because the guy keeps coming, he's in so much pain, he keeps coming in and out of consciousness. And you're like... Jeez,
but there's nothing that's
poor guy
happening
alone.
When he's in this guy's body for so much. Like,
and it's not till the end that you figure out even how I got there, and you're like, oh goodness. By then you're just kind of tired, and I'm like,
I was exhausted.
Like, it was, it was kind of tough. So I think this is the thing.
I thought this was a hot mess of a book.
I thought it had so much potential.
Yes. And it just didn't.
And I still feel like this author could go, like, I feel like this author has great potential as a very unique mystery writer. But I also feel like there are lessons to be learned. Because that's the thing, if you're an editor and you're reading this closely, I don't know how you could have done it, like read this stuff over and over again, to be fair.
No.
Because
I couldn't revisit this book.
So the question, would we recommend it?
No. I wouldn't recommend this book at all.
I wouldn't.
It had such an interesting premise. Like, I love it. It was super creative what he tried to do. He just didn't.
The execution is
No.
Yeah. So I wouldn't. Sorry.
I really wouldn't. It's just too big of a book.
It takes a lot for me to not. I'm not that I don't recommend every book.
No, I can say.
But it takes a lot for me to be like, I didn't enjoy that at all. I really do try to find something in every book that I read, because this is a lot. This was a lot of work. He probably put a lot of himself into that, and I respect that level of commitment. But for me, it just didn't. It didn't get there, and I wouldn't. It was way too much of an investment to not work. So
this is a miss for you too. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't just me.
Yeah. So I'm 2 for 3. Rachel's 1 for 3.
1 for 3. But that's not that bad. I mean,
I don't think, you know, like we said, other than And Then There Were None, these are all new for us, which is nice.
Yeah.
We like going on the journey together.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've read it,
let us know what it was about it. If
listen,
you liked
honestly,
or disliked
if you liked it, please tell us in the comments. Let us see it from your perspective.
Yeah.
You know, if you didn't,
I mean, maybe people just forgave the obvious flaws because they liked maybe the murder mystery payoff. Because that was interesting.
That was interesting.
That was really the most interesting part of the book, is how, I mean, once you hit the cop and trying to wrap things up, but still, I mean, you're talking about less than 30% of that book.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much you have to read to get there. And I just don't know. I mean, like, I can forgive things in books that didn't really work if there was something that just really was overwhelmingly great. I don't think it was that great to overwhelm the rest of the book.
Well, yeah. Next week, so we're more than halfway through the month.
Yeah.
We only have 2 books left. Dolly's book will be best for last, I'm sure.
And I like James Patterson. I've read James Patterson. So
and let me say,
I have high hopes for that book. I think it'll be good.
To my memory, have never read a James Patterson book. Or if I have, it did not leave a lasting impression because I don't remember it. But I know like everything that Dolly does, so I'm very excited for this. I've already seen the album that she put out with the music that goes with this book, and I didn't listen to it because I'm waiting for the experience.
Or you can listen to it while you read?
Very likely.
I'm sure there's some playlist.
I very likely will become obsessive about her new album.
Maybe we should do that. We need to make sure. Somebody must put it out there, like, where you should listen to certain songs.
Yeah, because, like, well, the main character is a songwriter, so I assume there are, like, that's what, she wrote all the songs for the artists. Anyway, that'll be later, but first, we're gonna
get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we're gonna read the Lady Sherlock series next week. This is by Sherry Thomas. This was actually recommended to me by friends, and I do love Sherlock Holmes. I am a Holmes fan, and this is one of the many kind of takes on that character. But it's A Study in Scarlet Women, the first in the Lady Sherlock series. So if you would like to read along with us, grab a copy, and then we will be doing this next time. So like and subscribe. Feel free to share this. We're shooting to have 100 subscribers by the end of the school year. So tell your friends, and we will see you next time. Bye.